When we observe the course of human development, not merely with external historical eyes, but with the inner vision cultivated by spiritual science, we discover that chaos and order do not stand as opposites in a moral sense. Rather, they belong together as alternating moments within a single, lawful process of becoming. What appears outwardly as disorder, confusion, or breakdown is often inwardly the preparation for a higher form of order, an order that can no longer be given to the human being from outside, but must be born from within the activity of the I. In earlier epochs of humanity, order was largely bestowed upon human beings through instinct, tradition, and inherited spiritual guidance. Human thinking moved within forms that were not consciously created, but received. This bestowed order carried humanity safely through long stretches of evolution, yet it did so at the cost of freedom. The human being did not yet stand fully awake within their own thinking. What was gained in security was lost in self-consciousness. Spiritual science shows that such an order, however necessary it once was, had to dissolve if the human being was to become a truly free bearer of spirit. This dissolution appears to modern consciousness as chaos. Thought no longer flows within given forms. Certainty evaporates. Contradictions arise where once there was coherence. Steiner describes this condition not as an accident of modernity, but as its essential task. The human being is placed into a condition of inner disarray, so that thinking itself may become an organ of freedom. Chaos, in this sense, is not the absence of law, but the withdrawal of outer lawfulness, so that inner lawfulness may awaken. This process can be observed clearly in the development of the individual human being. In childhood, order is provided by imitation, rhythm, and authority. The child does not yet distinguish itself sharply from the world. Its soul lives within a kind of protected order that allows the physical and etheric bodies to form. But as development proceeds, particularly in adolescence and early adulthood, this order must be shaken. Doubt, confusion, rebellion, and inner fragmentation often arise. From a merely psychological perspective, these appear as disturbances. From a spiritual perspective, they are the birth pangs of individuality. Steiner emphasizes that the greatest danger of our time lies not in chaos itself, but in the attempt to prematurely suppress it. When chaos is covered over by rigid systems, dogmas, or purely intellectual constructions, it does not transform into living order, but hardens into lifeless form. True order, the kind that can support human development today, must arise through conscious activity. It must be wrested from uncertainty through moral imagination, not inherited as finished structure. Thus, chaos serves as a threshold. It strips away what can no longer live, what can no longer carry the forces of becoming. Order, when it returns, does so in a new form, flexible, inwardly grounded, and capable of growth. Human development unfolds through this rhythm, not as a straight line, but as a breathing process of dissolution and reformation. Only by passing through chaos can the human being learn to shape order freely, and only through freely shaped order can chaos become creative rather than destructive. If we now follow this law of chaos and order into the present epoch, Steiner leads us to the figure of Michael and to the unique spiritual situation of modern humanity. The Michaelic age is characterized precisely by the fact that the old cosmic order of thinking has been withdrawn from human beings. In earlier times, intelligence lived more in the world than in the human head. Thought was experienced as something objective, woven into the fabric of existence. With the advance of evolution, this cosmic intelligence has descended into human thinking itself. What once ordered the world from without now lives in a fragmented and often chaotic way within the human soul. This descent is not harmonious. Steiner describes how, when cosmic intelligence enters human consciousness, it first appears as disarray. Thoughts scatter, certainty dissolves, and the human being experiences a profound inner insecurity. The modern intellect, when left to itself, often feels empty, restless, and disconnected. This condition is frequently experienced as crisis or meaninglessness, yet from a spiritual scientific standpoint, it is the necessary starting point for a new form of order. Intelligence must first be freed from its cosmic framework before it can be taken up consciously by the human eye. Michael's task in this epic is not to restore the old order, but to guide humanity through chaos, without allowing it to fall into either despair or illusion. Steiner speaks of Michael as the spiritual being who helps human thinking become upright, courageous, and morally permeated. Where chaos threatens to dissolve thinking into mere opinion or arbitrariness, Michael strengthens the capacity for inner clarity. Where order threatens to harden into abstraction or ideology, Michael calls for living thought that remains connected to reality. This struggle is not waged in outer events alone, but in the most intimate sphere of human consciousness. Each individual experiences moments when inherited beliefs no longer hold, when familiar structures collapse, and when thinking itself feels unreliable. These moments are deeply unsettling, yet they are also decisive. If the human being flees from them into ready-made systems, chaos becomes destructive. If, however, the human being endures them with inner discipline, chaos becomes the soil from which free thinking can arise. Steiner emphasizes that this endurance requires moral strength. Chaos cannot be mastered by cleverness alone. The intellect, left to itself, easily fragments reality into unrelated parts. What is required is the participation of the whole human being, thinking illuminated by conscience, feeling guided by responsibility, and will strengthened by courage. Only then can order reemerge as something living, not imposed, but grown. This new order does not present itself as a closed system. It remains open, adaptable, and inwardly mobile. It is an order that can tolerate uncertainty without losing direction, because it is rooted in the activity of the I, rather than in external authority. In this sense, the Michaelic age demands a continuous oscillation between chaos and order. Thinking must repeatedly let go of rigid forms in order to renew itself. Each renewal deepens freedom, yet also increases responsibility. Thus, chaos and order become ethical realities. The human being is no longer protected by given structures, but neither is it abandoned. The spiritual world withdraws in order to be met freely. What appears as chaos on the surface conceals a profound invitation to become co-creators of order in full consciousness. This invitation defines the destiny of modern humanity. When we descend from the broad historical and spiritual perspective into the concrete life of the individual, the law of chaos and order reveals itself with particular clarity in human biography. Steiner repeatedly emphasizes that a human life does not unfold as a smooth, linear progression. It advances through thresholds, crises, interruptions, and apparent breakdowns. These moments, often appear as personal chaos, loss of direction, inner conflict, illness, or a sudden collapse of meaning. Yet spiritual science shows that such phases are not accidental disturbances, but necessary moments of reorientation in which the soul loosens itself from forms that have become too narrow. In childhood and early youth, order is largely given. Family structures, habits, education, and social expectations provide a framework within which the soul can grow. This order is protective and necessary, but it is not yet freely chosen. As the human being matures, this externally supported order must be shaken. Steiner points to the great life thresholds around the ages of 21, 28, 35, and beyond as moments when previously valid orientations lose their power. The soul enters a phase of inner uncertainty. What once guided no longer speaks with the same authority. Chaos enters, often quietly, sometimes dramatically. From a purely psychological viewpoint, such moments are often interpreted as dysfunction or failure. From a spiritual scientific viewpoint, they are invitations. The soul is being asked to become active in shaping its own order. The old forms dissolve because they cannot carry the individuality further. If the human being resists this dissolution and clings to what is familiar, development stagnates. If the human being surrenders completely to chaos without inner effort, the soul may fragment. But if chaos is endured consciously, it becomes the womb of a deeper selfhood. Steiner also connects chaos and order with health and illness. In many cases, illness represents a breakdown of order within the organism. Yet he cautions against viewing illness merely as error or malfunction. Certain illnesses, especially those connected with the nervous system and the soul, can indicate that the existing order of life no longer corresponds to the individual's inner needs. The organism, in a sense, forces a pause, a dissolution, so that a new balance may be sought. Healing, in this light, is not simply the restoration of the old order, but the emergence of a new one that better serves the whole human being. This is especially evident in the realm of rhythm. Steiner shows that health depends on rhythmic balance between activity and rest, waking and sleeping, tension and release. When rhythm is disturbed, chaos enters the organism. But this chaos is not always destructive. It can signal the need for a reorganization of life habits, relationships, or inner attitudes. The task is not to eliminate chaos at all costs, but to listen to what it demands. Where rhythm is consciously reestablished, order returns in a more living form. In the inner life, chaos often appears as doubt, contradiction, or loss of faith. Steiner insists that such experiences are unavoidable on a genuine path of knowledge. Old certainties must die so that thinking can become free. Spiritual development does not proceed by accumulating answers, but by passing through questions that unsettle the soul. The danger lies not in questioning, but in the refusal to seek a higher synthesis. Chaos becomes fruitful only when the human being remains inwardly active, cultivating patience, attentiveness, and moral resolve. Thus, biography, health, and inner development all follow the same law. Chaos is the moment of release. Order is the moment of formation. Neither can be eliminated without damaging the whole. The art of human development lies in recognizing when order must be allowed to dissolve and when chaos must be shaped into form. This art cannot be learned through rules alone. It grows through experience, self-knowledge, and the gradual strengthening of the I. In the final part, We will bring these threads together and show how chaos and order, understood in this way, become not threats to human development, but its deepest law, one that leads, step by step, toward freedom and responsibility. When we bring together the threads of cosmic evolution, historical development, and individual biography, the law of chaos and order emerges as one of the deepest guiding principles of human becoming. Steiner shows that this law is not imposed upon the human being from outside, nor does it function mechanically. It lives within the human "I" as a continual task. Chaos and order are no longer merely conditions that happen to us. They become forces we must learn to work with consciously. In earlier stages of evolution, order preceded chaos. Humanity lived within given forms, and disruption was experienced as a threat. In the present epoch, this relationship is reversed. Chaos increasingly precedes order. The human being is first placed into uncertainty, contradiction, and fragmentation, and only afterward called to shape coherence. This reversal is essential for freedom. Order that arises without passing through chaos remains unconscious. Order that is born from chaos bears the imprint of the I. It is this latter order that can carry moral responsibility. Steiner emphasizes that the decisive question is therefore not how to avoid chaos, but how to remain inwardly present within it. Chaos becomes destructive only when the human being loses inner orientation. This orientation does not come from fixed doctrines or external authorities, but from the capacity to think with moral clarity and to act out of responsibility. The strengthening of thinking as a moral organ is, in this sense, the central task of the Michaelic age. Through it, chaos can be transformed into creative ground rather than abyss. This transformation requires courage. Chaos exposes the human being to uncertainty, vulnerability, and the absence of guarantees. Yet it is precisely in this exposure that freedom is born. Steiner makes clear that freedom cannot arise where life is fully ordered in advance. It requires space, openness, and the risk of error. Order, when it returns, must therefore remain permeable. It must be capable of dissolving again when life demands renewal. In this way, chaos and order form a living polarity rather than a static opposition. Seen in this light, modern crises, whether personal, social, or cultural, appear in a new perspective. They are not merely signs of decline, but thresholds. They demand from the human being not resignation or blind resistance, but conscious participation. Where chaos is met with awareness, patience, and ethical striving, it becomes a source of insight. Where order is shaped with flexibility and humility, it becomes life-supporting rather than oppressive. Steiner's spiritual science thus offers neither comfort nor condemnation, but orientation. It shows that human development unfolds through a rhythm of dissolution and formation, questioning and shaping, letting go, and creating anew. This rhythm cannot be bypassed without loss. But when it is consciously embraced, it leads the human being toward a form of order that is no longer inherited or enforced, but freely won. In this sense, chaos and order reveal themselves as the hidden grammar of human development. Through their interplay, the human being learns to stand upright in thinking, responsible in willing, and truthful in feeling. What once appeared as threat is transformed into task, and in this task lies the possibility that humanity, through the strengthening of the I, may learn to shape the future not through fear of chaos, but through confidence in its capacity to bring forth living order.